The story begins in a damp cave enveloped by darkness, where terrifying screams echo through the walls. Their leader, a goblin with bloodshot red eyes, goes mad and declares himself the new leader. However, his comrade disagrees, believing that he has done the most work and should be the leader instead. Filled with envy and rage, he charges at his comrade, biting into the other's nose. The cave is now filled with chaos as screams ring out more violently. Other goblins gather around, watching the battle with amusement and betting on who will win. Chaos is their favorite pastime, bringing endless joy to these simple souls. Amidst the excitement, they discuss bringing out the prey to satisfy their desires. The old leader had hidden a human girl, untouched thus far. The goblins whisper to each other, plotting to find and take her for themselves. Some hesitate, because the prey is protected by a different goblin. Unlike the others, this goblin wears tattered clothes that cover almost his entire body. His appearance is terrifying, not only due to his attire, but also because of the aura he exudes, almost human-like. When the previous leader died, they believed this different goblin would keep the prey for himself. They stare at him, waiting for the chance to snatch the girl. Smarter goblins suggest waiting longer. Their strongest members have gone ahead to find the prey. The plan? Let the strange goblin fight those guys, take advantage of the chaos, kill him, and finally claim the prey. However, they don't expect the strange goblin to overhear their conversation. Realizing the girl is in danger, he runs back to where she's held captive, easily outpacing the other goblins. Horror awaits him. The rebellious goblins are ready to violate the girl. Her eyes wide with fear, she begs for help. The strange goblin speaks, demanding they release her. The leading goblin refuses. The old leader is dead, and he considers himself the strongest. But the strange goblin is determined to protect the girl. The big goblin and his henchmen attack, outnumbering and quickly subduing the strange goblin. Yet, he doesn't give up. He believes these low-level goblins can't defeat him. Most importantly, he doesn't want to die there. Seizing the opportunity, he used his weapon to kill the biggest goblin, instilling fear in the others. Never before had a goblin wielded a sharp weapon and attacked like a human being. The strange goblin pointed his weapon at the rest, his words emotionless. Leave or die. These words, coupled with the image of the giant's demise, quickly frightened them. The remaining goblins fled, shouting threats as they promised to return with reinforcements. Despite their departure, the strange goblin remained vigilant, refusing to let his guard down. He knew that this was just the beginning of the hellish days to come, now that he had chosen to fight against his own kind. The girl's name was Kelia. She supported him and expressed gratitude for saving her once again. She sensed that he was unlike the other goblins. He had never harmed her. She hoped he would survive. While it was true that goblins typically wouldn't protect a human, there was a deeper reason driving the strange goblin's actions. You guessed it right. He was a human just a few days ago. Dian died in a terrible accident. Instead of meeting God after being hit by a truck, he found himself transferred to another world with a system. However, the system wasn't fully activated yet. Apart from being able to see some stats, it didn't seem to have any other functions and appeared quite useless. But since meeting Kelia, she explained the role of those stats in this world. This world was ruled by gods, and powerful monsters roamed its lands. Humans had demonstrated their significance on this continent through absolute power. Unfortunately, the goblin he was reborn as happened to be the weakest and dirtiest monster in this world. His stats were extremely low, making him vulnerable to being easily killed by his own kind. Currently, he was at level 5 with HP 20, Strength 5, and Defense 5. These stats gave him an overall strength of 30. Fortunately, his name remained unchanged. He was still Lamphine. However, there was a way for him to become stronger here: mating with girls. In this harsh reality, goblins could enhance their strength through constant mating and procreation. The catch? Goblins lacked a female gender, so they could only mate with other female creatures. That's why goblins constantly plundered and kidnapped women. For Lim, a former human, this behavior clashed with his morals. Yet, survival demanded strength, and this dilemma weighed heavily on him. Seeing Lim Tian's worry, the girl reassured him not to overthink it. After spending days with him, she recognized that he was fundamentally different from the other goblins and genuinely didn't want to live among them. With a hopeful smile, she promised that when the knights came to rescue her, she would tell them about how he saved her. The knights, known for their fairness and justice, would likely agree to let him live in her village. Her optimism gave Lim Tian hope. He believed what she said. Even if the system couldn't activate immediately, as long as he persevered until the humans came to rescue them and gained their protection, he could survive. Then, he could slowly figure out a way to fully activate the system. However, things weren't as easy as Lim Tian had hoped. A scream, a sign of the goblin's return, prompted him to order Kelia to hide, and she obeyed. Immediately, the first goblin appeared, charging wildly at Lim Tian. It screamed that humans had arrived and expressed its desire to mate with the girl to become stronger. The goblin knew that once it became stronger, it wouldn't be killed. Frantically searching for Kelia, it became an easy target for Lim Tian, who swiftly dispatched the unfortunate goblin. Lim Tian then informed Kelia that humans were here to save her. Her face lit up with joy. She assumed it was a knight. She said she would go out to check. Lim Tian's face also brightened, assuming it was a knight. He hoped this was an opportunity to prove his worth. However, his excitement waned when he witnessed the knight easily dispatching the other goblins with sheer strength. The knight didn't exert much effort, seemingly venting his anger at these filthy creatures who had torn his clothes. Lim Tian studied the human's stats, utterly surprised. The knight's name was low.Later, level 25, with strength 30 and defense 50. Equipped with platinum armor and an iron sword, he possessed a total power of 400. This was the highest stat Lim Tian had seen since arriving in this world, making him question if low.Later was truly human. As Lim Tian stood there, amazed at how effortlessly the human dealt with the goblins, Kelia excitedly approached, addressing low.Later with delight. However, Lim Tian's joy turned to concern when he noticed low.Later raising his sword to attack Kelia. Reacting swiftly, Lim Tian pushed her away from the impending strike just in time. Despite saving Kelia from death, the sudden attack left Lim Tian baffled. The Holy Knights were supposed to be here to save people. Why were they attacking Kelia? Lim Tian assumed that because the cave was quite dark, low.Later had mistaken the girl for a goblin. But that didn't seem to be the case, as low.Later angrily expressed his disdain for a goblin having dodged his attack. Kelia quickly tried to explain that she was human, but low.Later silenced her. He knew who she was, yet he believed she had been defiled by the goblins and might even be pregnant with their child. To him, it was laughable that someone as filthy as her would expect mercy. Death seemed a more fitting punishment. Kelia begged him, insisting that despite her capture, she hadn't been defiled by the goblins. Then she pointed to Lim Tian, explaining that he was the one who had protected her. But unfortunately, low.Later didn't believe a word she said. The idea that a goblin had saved her and wasn't a human enemy was beyond the bounds of a believable story. He raised his sword to end her. Lim Tian couldn't believe what he was seeing. He didn't expect things to end so quickly. With no other choice, Lim Tian stepped forward without hesitation, pushing Kelia aside and facing low.Later. He hoped there would be enough time for Kelia to escape. Lim Tian grabbed his crude weapon and lunged at low.Later. This was an outcome he hadn't expected, but even if he had to sacrifice himself, he wanted to protect the girl. Perhaps this act would prove he was once human. But before the collision, an aura enveloped Lim Tian, leaving both him and low.Later astonished. This magic emanated from a woman dressed in white. Her aura exuded holiness and solemnity. She demanded that low.Later stop because she felt this goblin was strange. This woman was none other than Saint Ephra. Seizing the opportunity, Kelia crawled over and begged Ephra to save them. Ephra helped Kelia to her feet and presented her to Loader, who had tried to kill her just minutes ago. Then, Ephra turned her attention to Lamthin and asked if he could understand what she was saying. Lamthin was trapped within the barrier. According to what Kelia had told him, Ephra was the saint and the spokesperson for the divine temple. She could be his only hope of leaving this place alive. Lamthin quickly responded that he could understand. He took a deep breath and explained that he wasn't a monster of this world. He used to be human, but an accident transformed him into this goblin-like form. He could explain everything if she took him along. While Loader thought this goblin was just a bit smarter than the others, Ephra smiled. Goblins were usually stupid and lowly creatures, unable to think or speak fluently. Yet, this goblin could speak, and this might be a blessing from the Holy Mother. Ephra turned to Kelia and asked her to confirm if this goblin really hadn't hurt her. Kelia happily confirmed that Lamthin not only hadn't hurt her, but had also protected her from other goblins and provided her with food. This pleased Ephra, who realized the strangeness of the goblin. She decided to take it back to the temple and study it thoroughly before making any decision. Hearing this, Kelia was very happy because she had fulfilled her promise to the goblin. Ephra then turned to Lamthin and asked if he was willing to go with them. Lamthin was overjoyed and immediately replied that he was willing. Finally, everything seemed to be getting better for Lamthin because he was with someone who could listen and understand reason. With a snap of her fingers, Ephra quickly shattered the barrier that imprisoned Lamthin. She then ordered everyone to prepare to leave. Lamthin felt a sense of safety about his future, for which he was incredibly grateful. He immediately approached Ephra to express his gratitude, promising that he would repay her. But as he looked closer at her face, he noticed a cruel smile that took him by surprise. The next thing he heard was a sound he was all too familiar with, the sound of metal piercing flesh. He knew what was happening, but he turned back in fear. That fear was immediately confirmed. Kelia was dead. Her lifeless body lay motionless on the cold ground. Lamthin was stunned, unable to move. The shock was too great. Just as he thought things were getting better, it turned out to be a cruel lie. At this moment, the voice of the woman he had thought was his savior rang out, accompanied by cruel laughter. She mocked his naivety and declared that his willingness to follow her was the best way to repay her. Lamthin now understood the cruel reality of this world. A week passed, and in the village, the bell tolled, summoning everyone to the town square. As they gathered, Loader addressed the assembled villagers, announcing the devastating goblin attack on Brighttown. Fury ignited among the villagers. They demanded blood for blood, viewing humans and goblins as sworn enemies, precisely the reaction Loader had hoped for. After fueling their hatred, Loader began to praise the temple. He explained that acting on the temple's behalf, the knights had slain these goblins and avenged the villagers. Then, the holy maiden Ephra stepped forward. With her powers, she prayed to the temple, assuring the villagers that it would always protect its faithful. Her words instantly swayed even the previously skeptical villagers, reigniting their faith. They turned to the temple with renewed devotion and trust. Later, Ephra returned to her chambers, basking in the success of her speech. It was nothing new. These villagers were the most gullible fools imaginable. They would pray even harder, worship the temple more fervently, and bring her more offerings. Her smug satisfaction was abruptly interrupted by a voice calling her name. The person who called her name was the goblin Lamthin. He had regained consciousness, and it was clear he had been through hell. Horrifying scars covered his body, and one eye had been gouged out. Despite his injuries, a burning rage blazed in his remaining eye. Ephra ignored his words, a twisted smile playing on her lips. She was amazed by his tenacious spirit. It had been a long time since she'd seen such determination to survive. Perhaps this was why the temple hadn't eradicated all goblins from the continent. Lamthine's return to consciousness excited Ephra. She could continue her experiments, observing how the poison affected him. Lamthine, enraged, repeated his accusations. "You tricked me. You killed Kelia. Is this the true face of your temple? This so-called justice that humans boast about?" His fury was met with Ephra's cruel indifference. She silenced him with a sharp thrust of her staff against his mouth. She laughs, mocking his anger, and stating that, how dare a weak, filthy creature like him, a degenerate goblin, speak of human justice? She claims Kelia was under a spell and dared to speak for him, a betrayal that led to her death. "Goblins are nothing more than insects on this continent," she continues, "and it's a great honor that the Holy Maiden even speaks to him, and telling him to be grateful and use his wretched little body to serve mankind and the temple's experiments." The brutal torture continues, leaving Lamthine helpless to resist the endless, unbearable pain. Even when he falls unconscious, he's quickly awakened by the torment. He wonders if he'll die here, but he can't blame anyone but himself. Reborn as a lowly goblin, he had naively believed in the kindness of humans, not of his kind. His weakness and naivety led to Kelia's death. Captured by the villagers, low.Later and Ephra tortured and tormented him with every imaginable cruelty, taking sick pleasure in his suffering. Lamthine's suffering eventually comes to an end as he's tortured to death by the cruel woman. His only wish in his final moments, never to trust humans again. If he could do it all over, he'd crush their bones and drink their blood, but that's only if he could be reborn. As his consciousness fades, Lamthine awakens in a different space, a place filled with brilliant white light and twinkling stars. His body is fully healed. Before he can ask where he is, a system window appears, informing him that the Goblin Life Simulation System has been activated. He has died. A brief summary of his life flashes before him. Due to his naivety, he forgot he was a goblin. Humans will never trust goblins, and he died from torture and abuse. This pain will be engraved in his mind, and he will never forget. As a result, he is the most tragic character in the rebirth system. The system presents a choice: start again, or let his soul dissipate. Excited for revenge, Lamthine chooses to be reborn as a goblin 1 week earlier. A white light envelops his body, signaling the start of his Goblin 2.0 life. His eyes now filled with rage, this rebirth is slightly different, his chance for vengeance against low.Later and Ephra. To help him live longer, the system decided to grant him a little more power. Feeling the newfound strength, Lamthine smiled with satisfaction. Even if it was just a small improvement, coming back to life was the most crucial thing. However, it appeared that this was his only chance. The system immediately warned him of danger. People from the temple were approaching, and if he died again, he wouldn't be reborn. This revelation shocked him, but he didn't expect more. Being reborn once was already a miracle. Still not strong enough to take on the temple, he promptly asked the system for guidance. It introduced him to the Goblin Life Simulation System, which could simulate his life and predict future events. Each choice he made would lead to different outcomes. The simulations required 24 hours to complete, and afterward, he would earn points that he could exchange for items within the system. Lamthine found this amusing. The simulation method allowed him to glimpse the future, so he immediately began using it. The system reminded him of the current situation: escape from the Goblin Cave. To do so, he had two options. 1. Warn his goblin friends and unite to face the humans. Reward 10 points. 2. Hide in the cave and hope the temple people wouldn't find him. Reward 0 points. Lamthine considered his choices. Although there were 3 options, he was certain that even if all the goblins in the cave united, they couldn't defeat low.Later. The battle would end in their deaths, and he wouldn't escape. Nevertheless, he chose to simulate the first option. His hope was to earn enough points to exchange for a weapon from the shop, allowing him to execute a sneak attack on low.Later as predicted. After the simulation, all the goblins were killed. A complete failure. The system advised him to think carefully when making decisions and rewarded him with 10 points. Despite the failed plan, Lim Tian was pleased with the points he received and quickly accessed the system's shop. Numerous weapons materialized before him, but the problem lay in his insufficient points. The only item he could afford was a short knife, which would boost his movement speed by 10% and increase his strength by 15 points. He seized the knife, and the stats immediately appeared on his information panel. At this moment, Lim Tian recalled Kelia and wondered why he hadn't seen her. The system informed him that due to his rebirth, events in this world had shifted. Kelia hadn't been captured by the goblins. Instead, she lived happily with her family in the village. This news brought a smile to Lim Tian's face. He felt he had fulfilled his promise to bring her home. Now, with no worries on his path to revenge, he focused on escaping and surviving. He chose a narrow exit from the cave, anticipating fewer guards. Outside, only 2 guards conversed. These goblins were weak, making their tasks straightforward. Lim Tian listened carefully as they discussed their orders from low.Later. Kill any girl who escaped and prevent their return to the village. This conversation confirmed Lim Tian's belief that everyone in the temple was heartless, willing to kill their own kind. As a goblin, he saw no reason to show them mercy. Pinching his nose, he imitated a woman's distressed voice and pleaded for help. The guards immediately reacted, eager to kill the girl and claim a reward from low.Later. One of them entered the cave, knife concealed behind his back, reassuring the girl that he was there to take everyone home. But when the figure emerged, it wasn't a woman. It was Lim Tian, brandishing a sharp knife at the knight. At the exit, the other guard noticed his comrade's odd behavior and approached. Shocked to find a goblin standing there, he barely had time to react. In a flash, Lim Tian dispatched the first knight, who crumpled to the ground in pain. The second knight, overcome with fear, screamed, "You can speak human!" Lim Tian's blade was the only response to the knight's terror. Knowing he was no match for Lim Tian's power, the knight realized he faced death. In desperation, he begged for mercy, knelt, and pleaded for compassion. He showed Lim Tian a picture of his family, hoping for a chance to return to them. The knight praised Lim Tian's intelligence, claiming he would understand that he was merely following the temple's orders. He insisted he was forced into doing what he did. The knight even offered Lim Tian a bag of gold and a beautiful woman, promising to select the most alluring one for him. However, for a man like Lim Tian, who had been betrayed, these words only fueled his anger. The knight's true nature was exposed. He had planned to use Lim Tian's hesitation to kill him. But it was all part of Lim Tian's plan. He swiftly and coldly ended the knight's life. Lim Tian felt pity for the man's family, but he understood that sometimes ruthlessness was necessary. Evil needed to be eradicated, especially now that he was no longer human. His attention was drawn to a voice coming from the forest. It was low.Later and his men, heading toward them. Lim Tian quickly removed the knight's clothes and left in a hurry, promising to find low.Later and Ifra soon. Later, low.Later and Ifra arrived at the scene. They were stunned to find the bodies of the 2 temple knights. After examining the bodies, low.Later suspected a goblin ambush. The clean, swift cuts were unusual. Ifra thought it was impossible for a regular goblin to kill both knights. She believed a goblin capable of such a feat must be a mutated one. Low.Later agreed with her assessment, furious that the knights couldn't handle a mutated goblin, and allowing it to escape was a bad sign. Low.Later, enraged, kicked one of the corpses, while Ifra, her lips licking, couldn't control her excitement and cruelty at the thought of obtaining such a unique specimen for experimentation. Night fell, and the moonlight cast an eerie glow on the forest. Lim Tian panted heavily, relieved to be alive. He had run until exhaustion, but he couldn't afford to let his guard down. He tried to recover as quickly as possible to continue his journey. Realizing they hated goblins so much, he decided to use the goblin way to deal with them. Goblins could upgrade their attributes through mating and cannibalism, increasing strength and creating stronger generations. Lim Tian's mind was consumed with hatred. In this life, he wanted all men to experience only the happiness of death, and all women to kneel and weep at his feet, especially low.Later and Ephra. His thoughts were interrupted by rustling leaves. He grew worried, thinking it might be one of low.Later's henchmen still pursuing him. Without hesitation, Lim Tian stood up and charged at his opponent. The unexpected appearance of Lim Tian shocked and frightened the stranger, who stumbled backward. Lim Tian, too, fell forward due to inertia, but quickly regained his posture. To his surprise, this goblin exhibited characteristics of a female. Why was a female goblin appearing at this time? According to common knowledge, goblins were exclusively male and reproduced through mating with other creatures. Her presence had completely altered Lim Tian's perception. In his confusion, his gaze remained fixed on the female goblin. She, too, seemed to anticipate his actions, quickly sitting up and pleading with him not to harm her. She explained that she had merely been fetching water. This only intensified Lim Tian's worry. How could this goblin converse in complete sentences like him? To find answers, he employed his assessment skill to check her attributes. She was at level 3, but her profession was that of a god's messenger. Her titles included Fallen God and Pure Soul. Her attributes consisted of Blood 10, Energy 2, and Defense 1, along with the skills of Devour and Wild Growth. Her overall strength totaled 10. Lim Tian was taken aback by a special note. When a male goblin combined with a female goblin, they would become the legendary Goblin God. This revelation sparked an impure thought. Mating with her would grant him immense power. As if sensing the darkness in Lim Tian's eyes, the girl recoiled in fear. She revealed that she had been sent by the patriarch to fetch water. Failure to return would result in a beating. Seeing the girl's fear, Lim Tian spoke up, apologizing for unintentionally scaring her. He even patted her shoulder to offer comfort, cautioning her that crying might attract unwanted attention. However, the girl remained unfazed by Lim Tian's gestures. Instead, she was fixated on why he could speak as she did. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. Lim Tian chuckled and nodded. Her curiosity was reasonable. Ordinary goblins couldn't communicate this way. Perhaps she rarely engaged in conversation with others in the tribe. However, Lim Tian's train of thought was once again interrupted when he noticed the girl clinging to his cloak. She praised Lim Tian, explaining that other goblins had mistreated her. This was the first time a goblin had shown her kindness. The girl suggested that Lim Tian return to her tribe with her. Lim Tian was surprised. He hadn't expected a nearby goblin tribe. Still unsure if the people from low.Later were chasing them, he needed to find a safe place to hide. His eyes lit up. This was an opportunity to recruit his first followers. He proposed that the girl take him to her tribe, and she readily agreed. Perhaps it was because she had never encountered a goblin as handsome as him. Soon, they arrived at the goblin camp. Lim Tian's appearance made the other goblins extremely wary. He was a stranger, dressed like a human, something they had never seen before. Lim Tian calmly observed the number of goblins present and decided to start building his kingdom from here. With a composed demeanor, he explained to the goblins that he wanted to join them and meet their leader. However, his proposal was immediately rejected. They deemed a freak like Lim Tian unworthy of meeting the patriarch. Instead, they planned to capture him and present him to the patriarch. At that moment, the girl stepped forward, blocking the goblins. She vouched for Lim Tian, insisting he was a good person. The commotion caught the patriarch's attention. His appearance surprised Lim Tian, a grizzled old goblin with a staff adorned with many skulls. He exuded ferocity, unlike any goblin Lim Tian had seen before. In addition to his attire, the patriarch possessed impressive stats. Level 25, Priest Profession, Blood 102, Mana 29, Defense 17. His skills included Devour, Summon, and Thorn Control. Equipped with a skull staff and bone chains, he boasted an overall strength of 200. Lim Tian's eyes widened with vigilance. He hadn't expected such a formidable goblin in this tribe. As the goblin leader emerged, he approached Lim Tian deliberately. His gaze shifted to the female goblin, questioning whether she had brought the stranger to the camp. The girl, her expression filled with worry, confirmed that she had indeed brought Lim Tian here, explaining that he had nowhere else to go. With terrifying red eyes, the leader praised the girl for her actions. But then, to her surprise, he issued a chilling order. The other goblins were to seize Lim Tian, intending to kill and devour him. The goblins, excited at the prospect of a meal, leaped up in glee. They shoved the girl aside and leveled their weapons at Lim Tian. Reacting swiftly, Lim Tian drew his own weapon, commanding them to halt. He claimed the ability to create weapons and proposed that joining their tribe would make them stronger. The iron knife in his hand immediately caught the leader's attention. The leader closed the gap, scrutinizing Lim Tian's face, claiming to detect deception. However, he also expressed curiosity about the weapons Lim Tian could forge. Lim Tian drew upon his knowledge of modern technology, explaining that he could craft weapons from iron, provided they could find iron ore. He promised that given enough time, he could create weapons more potent than the knife. Observing the leader's hesitation, Lim Tian emphasized that possessing iron weapons would give the tribe a fighting chance against humans and other monsters. The goblins began discussing the advantages of iron weapons. They recognized that, compared to humans, goblins were weak creatures. But with iron weapons, they could venture north to capture girls for mating. Faced with these immense benefits, the leader ultimately agreed to give Lim Tian a chance. He demanded that Lim Tian find iron ore and create weapons within 3 days, or he would be eaten. Not only him, but the female goblin would be eaten too. Hearing this, the girl became extremely worried. After giving his demands, the leader and the goblin horde left. Comforting the girl, Lim Tian looked towards the leader with a hint of anger and silently judged him as a cruel person, willing to kill even members of his own tribe when enraged. Lim Tian suppressed his anger, knowing that he couldn't defeat the leader with his current strength. He needed to use this time to create weapons and become stronger. The next day at dawn, Lim Tian led the goblins of the tribe to search for iron ore. By nightfall, the moonlight made the forest seem frightening. The female goblin was also with them. She was incredibly exhausted, stating that she couldn't walk anymore, having been on her feet all day and utterly drained. She received no help from her own kind. Instead, they beat her, called her ugly, and threatened to kill her if she didn't find the iron ore. She kept pleading, but the abuse didn't stop. They wanted to kill her right then and there for being lazy. Unable to bear the sight, Lim Tian picked up a rock and threw it at one of the goblins' heads. This action made them look at him with angry eyes. Lim Tian explained that he wanted them to follow and help find the iron ore, not to fight. He said he would tell them what iron ore looked like, and that if they wanted to live and return, they should go to the valley ahead and bring back some iron ore. If they didn't listen, he would kill them right then and there. Lim Tian took out his knife and glared at the 3 goblins with a terrifying expression. This threat terrified them. Imagining him killing them with the iron weapon, they rushed off to find the iron ore, not forgetting to threaten Lim Tian with death if he failed to create weapons. Lim Tian thought to himself that sooner or later they would kill him after obtaining iron tools. The task at hand was to become stronger. Observing Gobu's information, the notification about mating with her to become a goblin god caught Lim Tian's attention. He decided it was time to engage in adult matters. Seeing Gobu in tears, Lim Tian urged her to stop. He sat down beside her and asked if she wanted to follow him. He promised to protect her, provide food, offer a warm home, and ensure she wouldn't be bullied. The girl appeared confused, questioning the truth of his words. Lim Tian looked at her sincerely, affirming that everything he said was genuine. However, he admitted his current weakness and the need to become stronger to prevent further mistreatment. Gobu asked how she could assist him in this endeavor. Lim Tian felt a little embarrassed, but explained that mating would make him stronger. This revelation caused Gobu's face to flush. Suspicious, she asked if he was telling the truth, admitting she had never tried such a thing before. Lim Tian, flustered by broaching this topic, reassured her that everything would be fine and that he'd assist her if she wanted. Without waiting for her response, Lim Tian gently kissed her soft lips and then laid her down on the ground. The girl, embarrassed yet willing, agreed to bear his children. Shy sounds echoed through the air. Simultaneously, notifications appeared one after another, informing him that mating had raised his current level to 7. The sound of upgrading resonated, increasing his attributes as well. After some time, Lim Tian's body underwent transformation. His muscles became more defined. Now, at level 7, he possessed 40 HP, 10 strength, 6 defense, and a total strength of 65. The change surprised him. He believed that if he continued on this path, he could defeat the goblin leader. Lim Tian warmly stroked the girl's head, telling her that she was now his wife, and that he would protect her forever. Exhausted, the girl blushed and thanked Lim Tian, calling him a good person. Just then, a cry for help caught their attention. Looking in that direction, they saw a goblin running toward them in fear, closely pursued by a large wolf. What intrigued Lim Tian was the iron ore clutched in the goblin's hand. He hadn't expected to find iron ore here, but before he could claim it, he needed to address this immediate threat. Lim Tian swiftly drew his knife and instructed Gobu to wait. Gobu looked at Lim Tian with trust, reminding him to be cautious. For Lim Tian, this wolf represented a test of his strength. The wolf was about to pounce on the unfortunate goblin, who was desperately trying to escape. However, Lim Tian suddenly appeared, brandishing his sharp iron knife and charging directly at the large wolf. The fleeing goblin was utterly surprised by this action. Fear filled its eyes as it witnessed Lim Tian dispatch the wolf with a single blow. In the goblin's eyes, Lim Tian had become a formidable figure. When Lim Tian requested the iron ore, the goblin immediately handed it over, overwhelmed with fear. Holding the iron ore in his hand, Lim Tian chuckled with delight at its high quality. Now, they needed more of this precious resource, and upon their return, he planned to forge weapons for the goblins and their tribe. 2 days had passed, and with the help of other goblins, Lim Tian successfully forged a spear with an iron blade. Although it wasn't aesthetically pleasing, it marked a significant achievement for Lim Tian and the goblin community. They marveled at the fact that Lim Tian could create a weapon from iron, but they remained skeptical about its effectiveness. To demonstrate the new weapon's power, Lim Tian confidently thrust the spearhead into the tough skull of the tribe's most fearsome creature, Wolf. As expected, the iron spear pierced through effortlessly. The other goblins watched in astonishment. The goblin had previously saved pointed at the crocodile wolf's lifeless body, exclaiming that he had witnessed Lim Tian defeat the wolf within seconds using the iron weapon. The consensus emerged. The iron spear far surpassed the stone spears they had been using. While the goblins discussed the implications, Lim Tian raised the spear high and asked if they desired similar weapons. Without hesitation, the other goblins shouted their enthusiastic approval, hailing him as a god. However, one goblin remained discontent, the tribe's leader. He seethed with anger, feeling that Lim Tian had stolen his respect. The leader slammed his skull-headed staff onto the ground, locking eyes with Lim Tian. Admitting that Lim Tian's iron-working skills were miraculous, he declared it insufficient for Lim Tian to remain in the tribe. The leader issued a daunting challenge: create 50 iron spears within 2 days. The other goblins hesitated, but ultimately decided to assist Lim Tian. They found the leader's demand harsh, yet they dared not object. Lim Tian, undeterred, laughed confidently. Earning the respect of his peers was a crucial step in his plan. On the day of the deadline, Lim Tian proudly presented 50 completed iron spears. The tribe rejoiced, celebrating his accomplishment. The leader, wearing the same menacing expression and a cunning smile, expressed satisfaction. Lim Tian had proven himself, securing his place among the goblins. To commemorate Lim Tian's acceptance into the tribe, the leader organized a feast, demanding everyone's participation. The goblins danced and celebrated. The feast unfolded swiftly around the bonfire. Gobu sliced a succulent piece of pork and presented it to Lim Tian, the choicest morsel. Lim Tian accepted with delight, but as he continued eating, a searing pain gripped him. He collapsed to the ground, writhing in agony. Gobu's terror was palpable. It was evident that Lim Tian had been poisoned. The perpetrator? None other than the tribe's leader, who approached Lim Tian with a malevolent grin. The leader accused Lim Tian of foolishness, claiming to discern his true intentions. Those who dared challenge his authority, the leader declared, had only one destination: hell. Before Lim Tian could respond, the leader seized Gobu by her hair, dragging her closer. He reveled in Lim Tian's distress, intending to make him witness Gobu's demise. A crimson line appeared on Gobu's neck as the leader's claws pierced her skin. However, the blood that spurted forth wasn't Gobu's. It was the leader's. Lim Tian had severed the leader's arm. The poison had weakened Lim Tian, but he fought back. Using the bone chain in his hand, he retaliated. Lim Tian too sprang into action, deftly evading the leader's attack. With lightning speed, Lim Tian aimed his iron knife at the leader's head, ending his life. The goblins stared in terror at their fallen leader. Lim Tian stepped forward, proclaiming himself their new leader. Under his guidance, they would evolve into a formidable goblin tribe, one that never lacked for sustenance. He embraced Gobu, raising his knife high, asserting his supremacy over the tribe. Empowered by Lim Tian's strength, the other goblins swiftly accepted him as their leader, their simple minds fixated on primal desires, meat, and mating. In return for their loyalty, Lim Tian presented them with the lifeless body of their former leader. With permission granted, they unleashed their innate brutality, tearing into the corpse with savage fervor. Lim Tian's stomach churned with disgust, yet he understood that this brutality was the harsh reality of their existence. His focus shifted. Now, Lim Tian aimed to build a tribe that would thrive and grow stronger. Revenge simmered within him, and this gruesome act marked only the initial step. Amidst the chaos, unnoticed by all but one pair of eyes, a golden-haired elf girl observed from a distance. Her curiosity stirred as she wondered about the unfolding scene. Under the hazy moonlight of the strange world, amidst the ominous shadows of the trees, strange-looking houses appeared. A figure moved with incredible speed, taking just a few leaps to enter a brightly lit house. But what was truly striking was the horrifying scene below. Countless withered blue goblin corpses hung from large bones. The elf girl stopped in front of a house. This was the one who had secretly watched Lim Tian's tribe. She was Kasana, the princess of the elf tribe and a guard elf. When she saw the elf girl return, she was overjoyed. Ignoring the guard, Kasana immediately went inside. The guard was worried, as if there was something inside she shouldn't see. But Kasana didn't care. She said she had important news for her mother. Pushing the door open, Kasana rushed in and shouted, "Mother, she has something very important to report. There's strange activity in the goblin tribe in the eastern forest." However, the scene inside left her utterly bewildered. Elves were known as a noble race with brave warriors, yet here was a promiscuous elf, her full breasts on display in her revealing outfit, enjoying special attention from two men. Kasana blushed, stammering apologies and saying she had something to do. Before she could turn away, the queen's voice rang out. She demanded that Kasana stop and asked what urgent matter brought her there so hastily. Kasana's eyes turned serious, and she once again mentioned the goblin tribe in the forest. The queen didn't seem interested. She considered goblins low-level, weak, and filthy creatures. Kasana quickly explained she found the remains of a bear in the demon forest, completely chewed up. There are signs of a struggle, and many goblin footprints on the ground. The bear was likely killed by goblins from the demon forest. That giant bear is practically the strongest creature in the forest. Those goblins shouldn't be able to kill it. Her voice grew anxious. A few days ago, he saw the goblin leader killed by a young goblin. She worried the bear's death is connected to that goblin. The queen was slightly surprised to hear about the new leader, but didn't seem overly concerned. What interested her was the growing number of goblins. The queen snapped her fingers, asking the man to continue serving her. She ordered Kasana to lead a group to eliminate the goblins, but told her not to kill them all, leave a few alive. This wasn't out of kindness. The queen wanted to harvest the hearts of living goblins to brew a tonic for the elf men in her tribe. Of course, Kasana knew the effects of this potion. Hearing this, her face flushed again. Due to Kasana's diligence, the queen offered her a man for the night. She even asked if Kasana had any special requests. Kasana was startled. This reward embarrassed her. She said she had to check on some things tonight and quickly bid farewell to her mother. Back at Lim Tian's camp, the goblins were in a discussion. On the ground was a map of the elf tribe, painstakingly investigated by Lim Tian's subordinates. The tribe consisted of 30 houses, all situated high up. Lim Tian praised his subordinate, promising him 2 elf girls as a reward after defeating the tribe. He told everyone to prepare iron weapons. Hearing about the reward of 2 elf girls, the goblin was excited and eager, immediately going to tell everyone to prepare their weapons. Lim Tian's expression wasn't joyful at the prospect of attacking another tribe. This was a world where strength determined survival. If he didn't build his tribe into a force, sooner or later, they would be destroyed. Lim Tian carefully analyzed the situation. There were 30 houses in the village. If each housed 2 elves, there would be a total of 60 elves. Adding the 10 elves guarding the mine, the tribe would have at least 70 people. Looking back since their leader's death, Lim Tian had led the goblins in crafting weapons and hunting monsters, leveling up their abilities. The goblins, under Lim Tian's command, swept through the forest like a tidal wave, slaughtering countless monsters. These monsters, of course, were eaten. By devouring them, all goblins received new skills, such as tusk attacks and skin-hardening abilities, adding 15 points to their defense. Other skills included silent movement and venom production. Not all goblins gained skills from eating monsters, but the tribe's overall strength had improved. Some standout goblins had reached level 18, boasting high stats. Combined with simple iron spears and armor, they now possessed a total strength of 250. Although the average strength of goblins in the tribe had risen to 200, the elf tribe's collective strength remained significantly higher, which made Lim Tian a little worried. Facing a dangerous battle, Lim Tian resolved to prepare thoroughly. He decided to use the simulation system to find an effective attack method. In the simulation, he led a large goblin army to attack the elf tribe, confident of victory. However, they were ambushed by the elves, falling into a trap and getting shot down. Lim Tian himself was captured by the elf leader and hung in the demon forest as a warning to other goblins. The simulation results were disheartening: 0 score and no reward. Lim Tian pondered the phrase, "under someone else's control." Initially puzzled, he soon realized that his tribe was being closely watched by the elves. Closing his eyes, he focused. Goblin's keen senses allowed him to detect anomalies. Strange sounds reached his perception, and looking into the distance, he discovered unusual signs. Meanwhile, the elves hurried back to their tribe, led by Kasana. She couldn't believe that the goblin tribe would attack hers. Initially, she had come with a group to eliminate them. But upon arriving at the camp, she found the goblins had undergone drastic changes, especially after hearing about Lim Tian's plans. Kasana wanted to return and report to her mother, but it seemed too late. The elves were discovered, and arrows flew toward them. Now, injured and terrified, Kasana lay on the ground, surrounded by the bodies of other elves. In the distance, Lim Tian and the other goblins approached with sinister smiles. They were delighted to find a live elf. Despite her attempts to flee, Kasana couldn't get up due to a strange wound. perhaps poisoned by the arrow. Lim Tian, surprised at how easily he had captured her, declared that she had arrived at the perfect time. Coldly, he ordered his subordinates to capture all the elves. Kasana, awakened by an unknown liquid, revealed stunningly beautiful lines in her soaked form. Her dazed eyes evoked thoughts of wicked deeds. The goblins stared at her with undeniable desire, waiting for the opportune moment. Lamthine seized Kasana, acknowledging the undeniable allure of the elf's body. Capturing her would grant them a chance to defeat the elf queen. Gazed upon as prey, Kasana trembled. She attempted to intimidate Lamthine, calling him a coward, and declared herself the princess of the elves. She questioned why he dared to kidnap her and threaten her people. Kasana claimed that her mother's kindness had allowed Lamthine and his goblins to survive. Otherwise, they would have been eradicated long ago. She warned him that if he dared to touch her, the Goblin Queen would annihilate all the goblins present. Lamthine merely sneered at her threats. He flung Kasana to the ground, mocking her claims about the Elf Queen's kindness, while the surrounding goblins echoed his laughter. Pointing to a goblin, he stated that what he had heard from his subordinate contradicted Kasana's narrative. He emphasized that, although his subordinates might be foolish, they never lied. In Kasana's terrified gaze, Lamthine revealed that he knew her true purpose: to annihilate all the goblins in the forest. He explained that the Elf Queen wanted to keep some goblins alive, not out of kindness, but for another reason, one he wouldn't bother asking her about. Lamthine declared that tonight he would lead his tribe to find out. Commanding the goblins to feast on the dead elf and absorb their skills, Lamthine watched as the simple-minded goblins roared in delight. Meanwhile, Kasana was consumed by fear. Since his betrayal by humans, Lamthine had become cold and cruel to his enemies. A survival tactic, it seemed. He looked at Kasana with an emotionless expression, announcing that he would personally deal with her. Petrified, Kasana uttered only faint, choked sounds, followed by a scream that echoed through the forest. It appeared that Lamthine had done something truly horrifying. The system announced that Lamthine had reached level 30, gaining 50 HP, 10 strength, 10 defense, and the skills invisibility and night vision. In the elf village, from the elf queen's house, came the sounds of moans of pleasure and pleas of exhaustion. Inside, the queen felt heartbroken because her evil desires were not satisfied. She regretted that the last time she did not capture enough goblins to make tonics for these men. 3 men lay collapsed from exhaustion around her. Suddenly, she remembered Kasana and asked if she had returned. An elf quickly informed her that Kasana had left on a mission and had not yet returned, despite being past her expected arrival time. The elf suggested sending a party to help Kasana, which would also provide them with more goblins to kill and further boost the tribe's fighting abilities. The queen granted him full authority to send people to assist Kasana and eliminate the goblins. A voice pierced the silence, announcing that Kasana wouldn't be returning today. These words sent a jolt of fear through the group, a stark realization that they were under attack. The elf man was about to draw his weapon to fight when sharp iron arrows came flying, killing him instantly. The elf queen, with a mix of skill and luck, managed to catch one arrow, but was terrified by the sudden appearance of goblins in her home. Lamthine and his goblins entered through the window. He announced that he had captured Kasana and that she would soon be carrying his child. Lamthine even referred to the elf queen as his mother-in-law, declaring that they were now a family. Disgusted by these words, the elf queen was furious and demanded to know what Lamthine had done to her daughter. Lamthine pretended to be emotionless, acting as if he didn't understand what she was talking about. This action further ignited the elf queen's anger, and she charged at him, wanting to kill him immediately. However, it seemed that she was exhausted after being served by 3 men, and her attack was like child's play to Lamthine. He informed her that the elf tribe was currently surrounded, and if she surrendered obediently, he would consider treating them well. The Elf Queen collapsed to the ground, feeling her body go numb. She couldn't even muster the strength to sit up. Lamthine informed her that the arrow she had grabbed earlier contained goblin body fluid, which would cause rapid paralysis upon contact. Despite her anger, the queen struggled to rise. Her body, lacking clothing and covered in sweat, became alluring. Seeing his prey in distress, Lamthine felt intrigued. He mentioned that he knew she had used the goblin's heart as a stimulant. Surprisingly, the elves were so depraved that they utilized goblins in such ways. He guessed that she had never imagined a day like this, one when the goblins she despised would seek revenge. Hearing these words, the Elf Queen felt even more scared. She realized that the person in front of her was the same strange goblin Kasana had mentioned earlier. Screams and cries for help from outside reached the room. The queen asked what was happening, and Lamthine sneered, saying that things had already begun. Without giving the Elf Queen a chance to wait, Lamthine dragged her to the window, allowing her to witness the scene below, urging her to consider surrendering as soon as possible. While under them, the elf village seemed to be burning, flames everywhere, war raging. Goblins mercilessly killed the elves. The desperate elves screamed and begged their queen for salvation, pleading not to be captured by the goblins. Seeing her elf warriors falter against the goblin onslaught, the queen's worry and fear overwhelmed her. In a moment of desperation, she asked a foolish question. What was Lamthine to her tribe? Lamthine understood her underlying concern. He explained that the elf's strength hadn't diminished. Rather, his goblin tribe had grown stronger, leaving no hope for resistance. In the past, when the elves were mightier, they slaughtered goblins. Now, the tables had turned. The goblins were stronger, and it was only natural for them to retaliate against the elves. Lamthine urged her to face this grim reality and make a swift decision to minimize the damage. Approaching the Elf Queen, he whispered in her ear. Lamthine needed more powerful warriors, and he would spare her life. The fate of others in her tribe hinged on her choice. Outside, elf men continued to fall, and girls were captured by lustful hands, a barbaric scene. The queen's arrogance crumbled, and she knelt, begging Lamthine. She promised to fulfill all his demands as long as he spared her child. Displaying her vulnerability, she assured him that she would bear his child,